Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Ori and the Will of the Wisps for the Nintendo Switch. Yes, you heard me right. The game that was rumored not to be coming to Switch because people didn't think Microsoft would make another deal with Nintendo to have one of their first-party developed games on their rival's platform, and that it was too technically demanding for the Switch to handle. Well, guess what, guys? Will the Wisps is officially here. This is captured on an actual Switch, and it exists. I beat it. And I'm the kind of guy that just pretends that games on other platforms don't really exist, unless their name happens to be Danganronpa. Bring that to the Switch, please. So, how does Will of the Wisps hold up? Well, when it actually does hold up, it is amazing. The hand-drawn art style and fluidity of Ori's leaping around and nimble maneuvers, they're always a joy to behold, and the scenery never gets boring. However, in terms of the game's performance, this is all going to depend on your point of view, because when it actually does run, it runs beautifully. In fact, on the few occasions where I got stuck in this game and had to look up a walkthrough, no one did footage of the Switch version, so I had to go with walkthroughs of the PC and Xbox One playthroughs, and I could not find any differences. Now granted, I'm not one of those idiots that takes a magnifying glass and tries to look at every single pixel and see how optimized the Switch version was, but generally speaking, I could at least tell a little bit, like, yeah, this definitely looks rough around the edges. But Ori, I think the hand-drawn art style really helps it to feel like it could have been a native Switch game and wowed people because they didn't think the underpowered console was capable of this much beauty. However, there were quite a few times, and by quite a few, I mean almost every other second, where the game would just stop working altogether. Now, admittedly, this didn't happen while I was capturing this footage, so it might just be a problem with handheld mode. But there were so many times that I actually stopped keeping track, where the game would completely freeze for a couple of seconds, or I'd have to restart the game entirely. I got constant error messages, and not to mention, the game penalizes me if it detects that I'm offline. Yes, you heard me, a platformer that requires you to always be online. Why is this a thing? I can see this making sense for something like Tetris 99, but I'm only playing against myself. So, if they wanted to say their justification for this was, oh, well, you need to be online so that we can update the leaderboards. Okay, that's fine. But I'm not a leaderboard kind of guy. I'm not even a completionist, nor am I a speedrunner. I just want to play the game. And forcing everyone to feel like they're qualified for the leaderboard, that's just not going to do it. And I feel like the game suffered even more than it already needed to. It already had enough bugs. Why did you have to create another one? I don't remember Blind Forest ever doing that, so this feels like a true downgrade. However, to be fair, this has amazing frame rate and animation and fluidity when it does run. Just, if you're playing it in handheld, to be safe, unless there's a patch by the time of this video's release, play when you're near an internet connection. I know this is the Switch, and the big deal of it is that you can play anywhere, but somehow the developers must have forgotten that for Will of the Wisps. Now that you can actually play it, in the moments when this game runs, it is perhaps one of the best developed sequels I've ever seen from an indie company. It's almost as if Moon Studios looked at my review of Ori and the Blind Forest and they said, when we make our next game, let's do the total opposite of everything Paul complained about. And I'd like to say that they pretty much nailed it. So let's name everything, well, maybe not literally everything. I'm speaking in hyperbole here. Let's list just a few examples of how there were things that I hated about Blind Forest that the developers masterfully addressed. First off, the save system is no longer wonky. Instead of creating a soul link to create a save point for Ori by having enough resources to save, yeah, that was weird. Now the game just autosaves so frequently, a lot of times you probably won't notice that it's doing it. There's also the well system, which allows for fast travel, and eventually you get an ability to fast travel whenever you want, as long as you're actually on land. And this allows for you to save pretty much any time, and even if you find that the game doesn't autosave enough, you also get the option to do backup saves. Now, I wasn't able to test this feature because I was guessing that it either requires your Microsoft account or Nintendo Switch Online to access them, but the fact that it's there at all is a huge cry from Blind Forest's manual saving system. A lot of the critics, and I included myself among those critics, complained that the combat in Ori and the Blind Forest was way too simple and unwieldy. And I found that I loved the combat in Will o' the Wisps, and I didn't find a single moment where I thought the combat was frustrating. Every encounter that I had felt amazing, and when I got through it, I felt like I was a beast. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that you're way more in control of Ori himself, or herself. It's not really clear what gender Ori is. I'm just gonna say she, because, Ori has kind of a feminine type voice, though I'm one to talk. Basically, Ori gets a lightsaber, and she gets to, bash enemies at the press of your buttons in the direction you aimed, and you can even do it while Ori is clinging to walls, which happens a lot in this game. Which adds so much to simply spamming the button and hoping that Ori's companion would get the job done. Also, most of Ori's signature abilities from the previous game return, but you don't get them right away. Now, in most platformers, this is really stupid. Why is it that a character grows so much in one game and then gets underpowered in the next? However, in a game that's so light on story, like Will o' the Wisps is, it doesn't really matter. And I think it actually helps the game in the long run because with Ori and the Blind Forest having so many problems compared to this game, I can see a lot of players wanting to go straight to Will of the Wisps because the story is pretty standalone. You don't really need to understand what happened in Blind Forest to play this. And as a result, if the abilities are new to you, well, they're new to Ori in this game, too, so you don't have to feel like, oh no, I didn't play Blind Forest, so I don't know how to use these. Well, neither does Ori, so just relearn them. And the pace at which you learn the skills is really nice, and I feel like it was nice and balanced out. In fact, Ori's signature ability from Blind Forest to launch herself like a bullet across certain objects didn't even appear in my playthrough until I was in for about 3 hours, which is way longer than I waited in Blind Forest. And overall, I think the balance of earning skills and upgrades is much more finely tuned. Rather than having a skill tree of sorts, where you choose which branch you want to go on, now Ori can actually use the light orbs she collects to purchase new abilities and skills from traveling merchants, which gives the game a sense of currency, and it gives you more freedom in how you want to express yourself and what abilities you want Ori to have. You also get Gorlek ore, which can be used to build more structures and to change up the environment. So you can have a little bit of a Stardew Valley / Animal Crossing feel as you watch the forest become gradually more beautiful as you improve it based on your exploration. So overall, going out of your way to find secrets feels rewarding because the game actually provides you with your own way of progressing through the game and feeling like you're the one in charge, which of course is the point of most Metroidvanias. So that's a pretty amazing skill to have. Another thing I really hated about Blind Forest was the fact that even though it had multiple difficulties, I didn't really think that easy mode was all that easy. I thought it was still brutally hard, and at times it was even more frustrating than Tropical Freeze, which is saying something. However, while Will o' the Wisps was challenging, I wouldn't say it was unfair, like Blind Forest was. It had its moments, but usually I knew what I had to do. I just had to get better skills in doing it. I played on easy mode because I am not the best at hardcore platformers, and I felt like it felt like easy mode. The combat was satisfying, but it didn't feel overwhelming like Blind Forest did. And I feel like if players had played this on a harder difficulty and used my footage as an example, they would say, wow, you really stink, Paul. But because no one was watching me, I was able to club my way through many scenes that pro leaderboard runners would soar through, and I was like, yeah, I chose to play on easy because I stink. No need to rub it in. And I love them for it. And they also incorporated a lot of the additions that Definitive Edition had, such as having the Midnight Burrows be a level to begin with. Overall, I think Will o' the Wisps is such an amazing sequel that every indie developer should learn from how much Moon Studios was willing to listen to the concerns of the fans, as well as keeping everything that made Blind Forest so great and wrapping it up into a wonderful package. I definitely think whoever optimized this for the Switch needs to do a significantly better job in the patches, at least in handheld mode, because the numerous crashes and errors and not detecting that I was online really destroyed the experience for me on several occasions. And I had a panic attack every time I opened the map, thinking that I was about to push the game to its edge. However, the beautiful score encouraged me to keep pushing forward. The story had a lot more poignant moments, there were more NPCs, so I felt like there was more story that actually made sense. It didn't feel so abstract and dreamlike like Blind Forest did. The abilities were much more fun to play around with, and by the time Ori had everything, I was blasting my way through amazing zones. The boss battles were a lot more fun because I felt like I was actually in control of the encounters. And I just feel like, with the exception of not having the art gallery and the E3 trailer and the scoring of features of Blind Forest, this is better in just about every way. Once they can add patches, or at least I hope they do, to stabilize the game a little bit more in handheld mode, I think I might have to agree with the completionist. This really is a perfect sequel. It may not be a perfect game, but it's the perfect method of how to build on an original game's foundation. So with that, since this version came out in 2020, even if the original Will o' the Wisps was around for quite a while, I give this an 18 out of 20. I think I would dare say I would probably put it a 19 or a perfect 20 if they sorted out all of the hiccups in the errors and the crashes. This really is one of the finest platformers I have ever played. I know I say that so much, but Moon Studios, these guys, it seems like they are just on a roll to become one of the best platforming studios in the market. Now, I just hope the developers of Celeste 2 don't feel too bad about it. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends, and until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and oh man, why does this footage have to end here? I love this music. Bye.